Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of The Deliberate Zoomer, hosted by myself, Silas Maynor, and my good friend, Michael Simonton. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Who?
All right, and we're back with The Deliberate Zoomer, my good friend, Michael Simonton, and myself here talking to you today. Today we're doing a special short episode. We wanted to just kind of recap our, the first 10 episodes we had shot regarding the Deliberate Zoomer and how this all essentially started. So we're going to go through those 10 episodes and kind of talk about each topic that we touched on and go over the main thoughts in case you maybe didn't have a chance to listen to all the episodes. You want to get caught up and you want to really maybe get a few things set in stone as we go into this new year here. So I'll let you start it off, Michael, if you want to go through kind of your initial thoughts on on number one, accepting the facts.
Absolutely. So accepting the facts, basically, you have to be able to accept reality for what it is. You can't live in denial or, push off responsibility. In that episode, we really dove into the importance of accepting your situation, your reality, the world around you for what it is. For not making any excuses, none of the bullshit and the lies anymore. You have to accept the facts so that you can move on, progress, and grow from there. And that was really, I think, the succulent, the most important message in that episode. But Silas, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest takeaway in regards to like accepting the facts with your life is that you have to realize that you are going to be the most, influential agent of change in your life. We are humans. We obviously have human habits, but at the same time, we have an intellect. We have a will that can help us to break those things through thinking things, right? We have reasons so we can figure out what are my issues and how can I break them. So accepting the fact that you are in charge, that's really going to be what sets you out on a positive trajectory for your life. So I think that's very vital, of course. And then our second point was deciding what you want. And we discussed in that episode really trying to figure out exactly, a lot of people don't know what they want. So we essentially went through the main points of how to decide what you want. And I would say that the biggest ones of those were focusing on the 4 core values, the things that are important to you in life. And then from there, focusing on them, spending time each day and week, cultivating those interests. And ultimately, those 3 to 4 things will help you to figure out what you want on a more granular basis throughout the rest of your life. What were your exact thoughts on that episode that you wanted to share?
I believe if I remember correctly, that was the episode where I kind of brought up that analogy of, being in the ocean, you're not really knowing where you're going, but, because you're deciding what you want. And many of us, we struggle with knowing what that is up front. A lot of my siblings are the same way. I'm very much the same way. So it's just good to have that baseline go like, okay, I know what I don't want. I know what I'm kind of interested in. And then just work from there, kind of use that to narrow your focus each time and just dive into what you're interested in. And you'll use that, refine that, and you'll figure out what it is exactly you do want. So in deciding what you want, knowing what you don't want is just as important. And keep that in the back of your mind as as you do experiments with your life, as you try new things, because that will help guide your life and help you ultimately decide on a course and what's best for you.
Yeah, I think that actually, so, that reminds me, between when we shot that episode and now, I had finished listening to the 12 Rules of Life. And one of the things that Jordan Peterson brings up is that it's good to set goals of what you want, but it's also, like you said, good to set kind of a baseline of stay the hell away from that, because I don't want to become that. So a lot of people, I think, especially probably people listening, could maybe say, I don't want to be like that. And that might be your parents, the way they raised you or stuff like that. There's certain ways you want to not be. So having kind of both ends of the spectrum is really good. And I appreciate you bringing that up.
Absolutely. To that point there, it's great. You have that carrot, your goal hanging in front of you, but then you also, in the back of your mind, you've got those dogs, those fears, those wolves, whatever they are, chasing you. And that just adds more fuel to your fire.
Yeah, exactly. So then the third episode we had shot was regarding whether or not you're going to go to college. And I think I want to let you kick this one off, kind of summarizing your thoughts on what you would take away out of that. What's the most, basic information from that episode?
Most basic information is listen, look, understand. We've all been there. Most of us have been there, figuring out whether or not you want to go to college or college is right for you. And then kind of deciding, making that decision on your own. And you understand, as many of us go through that, we have all that peer pressure from those around us. You're graduating high school. Everyone's asking you, where are you going to college? What are you doing next year? Every parent is asking you, oh, what are you going to be? What are you doing? Everyone, the whole world is demanding that you have this answer right away. And you need to realize that, well, all those people might have your best intentions at heart. It doesn't mean they know what's best for you. So really taking the time to step away from that, to cut out all that excess, and figure out if college is right for you or not is important. And the way I think you should go about that is really decide on what you want. So if you're going, in many cases, unless you're going for like a STEM field, college isn't that important. A lot of, I think the stat is 80% of hiring managers are finding that college applicants are underqualified. They might have the degree, but they don't know jack. So you can fill that need by building a portfolio, by actually gaining the experience, doing different things. And you have to understand that that is another option, and then make that decision based off of what is best for you. College is a lot of time, energy, and debt. And one question to ask yourself, if you really think there's a whole lot of value behind college, is if everything, like if it was so smart or whatever, why is it that every degree takes 4 years? Like, why the hell would every degree take 4 years? If these things are different and they're specialized and it was actually built for your best interest, why would everything take 4 years? Like, shouldn't there be some degrees that take a year to get, some that take 2 years? And that's just kind of a thought to keep in the back of your mind as you look at college or not, because, well, I'm not a huge fan of college. I went through it a little bit, saw some. I talk about this all in the episode, but it really, ultimately, I decided that experience was worth more to me than, like, actual hands-on experience was worth more to me than sitting in a classroom and listening to a professor who's never run a business, who's never done any sort of job like that, who's all he's done is teach, tell me how to run a business and tell me how to teach. I was like, no, why don't I go figure that out on my own from people who are doing that? So thank you, but I'll pass. And that's just kind of like what helped me figure out if college is right for me or not. Let's hear yours.
Yeah, I think that for me, the biggest part that I wanted to communicate through that episode is that, like you had mentioned, is that you decide whether you want to go or not. Don't let the pressure of other people or the pressure of your parents even push you into doing that, because I've seen countless of my friends who have gone to college. They were pretty sure initially that they were going to do something, but then they get there and they're really not sure. They don't know. They're really starting to doubt the fact that they're, I'm spending all this money. Shouldn't I be doing this or that? And then before you know it, you're in a situation where it's kind of like, you're in a relationship for a long time, and the only reason you're staying there is because you've been together for a long time. It's like, no, you need to, if you're going to go into college, be willing to change your mind about it, because those years of your life after high school, that's really going to be where you get to know what your interests are and what you want to do. And the best way that I've experienced that is by doing jobs that interested me, doing jobs in fields that were interesting, working with cool people who taught me a lot. And from there, you really start to become your own person and to kind of add and subtract from your personality in the ways you like, because you're leaving the nest, you're leaving your parents' raising, and you're becoming who you want. So don't feel like you have to go to college. There's plenty of other opportunities. We have a number of our friends through Praxis who have obviously succeeded quite well. I have a friend of mine who's younger than me, making really good money, already a year and 3 months out of Praxis, never went to college, but is just a head and shoulders above the rest of the people out there in the job market because he got the experience and he worked hard. So those are my main takeaways from that one. Then going into the next episode, we discussed, that was episode 4. We discussed taking your first job. So picking your first job. And for me, I think this one is pretty vital, regardless if you go to college or not, right? Picking your first job should not be about how much money you're making. I know so many people, myself included, who really strove for a job where you make a lot of money. And there's obviously reasons for that. I grew up in a poor family, so to me it sounded great, but what what I gained from my first job, I'm glad I was able to have this, was even though I made good money, I had a really great mentor who taught me more than I could ever, like, there's no way I could repay him for all the things he taught me about that field, about finance field. And that's what really led me to be successful in my next roles. It wasn't, if I had been picking, two jobs that had average bosses, this guy was obviously above average boss, and one was going to make more money, then maybe go for that. But at the same time, you need to find a good boss. Find somebody who's going to teach you, who's going to put work into making you a better person. Because whether you've gone to college or not, you still have a lot to learn from hands-on experience doing that job. So be deliberate with that first job and don't be in it just for the money.
Absolutely. And so like with me, it was primarily, what are you looking for in a first job? It's not the money necessarily. Yes, it's nice if you can get it too, but you should prioritize and optimize for experiences gained, skills developed, and the community and culture. So those were like my big three things that I really wanted in a first job was culture, a product, and skills and opportunity growth. So picking that first job, you should really take the moment to consider, not necessarily if this is how much you want to make or if this checks all your boxes, but if this will give you a foundation to learn off of and build and grow from. Also, when your first job, it's not a marriage, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to spend you're not spending your whole life there. You can spend a year or two, whatever, however long you want to spend. And so don't really sweat it too much as long as you're gaining the skills and you're in the field that you're interested in at the time. That's what you should be prioritizing for, is the experience and the skills. Yeah, and then jumping into the next episode we had was episode 5, and that was honesty. And so for me, the honesty thing really comes down to, you can't, any relationship, anything you do in life has to be based off of a place of honesty, because if you don't, then it's gonna ultimately, it'll come back and bite you in the ass. Because by being honest, you're lying to yourself, you're lying to others, you're breaking any trust you have. And so even though some people will tell you white lies are okay, and sometimes sure, whatever, I'll leave that to you. I think it's very empowering and powerful to come from a place of honesty and integrity at all points in time, because by doing so, you develop character, you develop that personal brand. You let those around you know that they can trust you, and most importantly, you can trust yourself. So when you lie to others, you're lying to yourself too, and there's no way that you're ever going to amount to anything great if you can't admit the hard truth. And that was kind of like one of my main things with the honesty is like, the truth's the truth, bro. You don't like it, suck it up, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to really everything that, my point in that episode, I think what I wanted to communicate across is beyond, being honest with yourself is how you're going to advance. Because if you're honest with yourself, then you're admitting, I enjoy this or I don't enjoy this. And that's really important. But also, when you develop that habit of being honest with yourself, then before you know it, you're just a generally honest person. And that's what I attribute most of my success and my interesting jobs that I've gotten is to honesty, because in this world, there's so many people, so many who are not trustworthy. And a hiring manager is going to take somebody they can trust over somebody that has better skills, probably 9 times out of 10. So it's really important to hone that skill, because that's more than just you navigating your own life, right? And I think that's the other thing that it kind of plays into choosing whether or not to go to college. If you chose to go to college and you're committed to it, that's good. But at the same time, if you're 2 years in and you realize that you really don't like what you're doing, you should probably admit that. And even though it's going to be hard, because certain people will likely judge you for dropping out, including potentially your parents, like, it's okay, because if it's really not in you, you can't force yourself to do it, because you will regret it later on in your life. So is there anything you wanted to add on that point, or did you want to move on to the next?
Um, yeah, no, choosing, like, being honest, for me, like, in a lot of what you said, it does tie in with the accepting the facts deal. And I just kind of want to tie those 2 points together, because like by being honest with yourself, by accepting those facts, you're doing that. And you're right. It comes with being honest to your employees or your employers. That's really going to feed and fuel your job opportunities, your growth, and everything you've talked about. And I just think those are really important things to reiterate. So yeah, besides from that, we're solid on that one.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think so. Going into the next one, this is all a lot of these points pulled together, right? All of these things, as people are listening, they'll probably see a lot of things that go together. But choosing who you surround yourself with, this is a tough one. Again, we talked about how to distance yourself from people that might be toxic in your life, but really, this that episode discussed the importance of who you're spending time with because you become very much like the people you spend a lot of time with, right? You become the average you become the sum of the five people you hang out with the most, right? So that's going to be another, flex of this practicing honesty, right? Is assessing who you spend time with. And I'm realizing this, being back in Wisconsin for the holidays and seeing some of my old friends. It's interesting to see where they've gone over the past 6 months, right? You see that some people have chosen to invest in themselves and they're succeeding, and they've changed their friend groups, and some have just chosen to go with the flow and do what's most fun and what's most enjoyable at the time, and they really haven't gotten anywhere. Some of them, unfortunately, it seems as though they've gone backwards. So choosing who you surround yourself with is very important. And my other main point, I believe, in that episode was finding a mentor. I'll toss it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, no, to choose, and the point of choosing, choosing who you surround yourself with, like you said, you're the average of the five people you spend most time with, but also birds of a feather flock together. Recently I met this guy, I can't remember where it happened. I very much remember what was said, but I don't quite, it's slipping my mind. But what happened was, I don't know, I was very impressed with the individual. We're working on some sort of project, and he jokingly laughed to me and said something along the lines of, I always try to be the dumbest person in the room. And he was a really smart and successful guy. And that was his mentality, is like, always have better people around you, because that's what's going to elevate you. That's what's going to help you grow and develop, is choosing those people, like mentors, peer groups, whatever. But those who are good, smart, solid people, that way you can grow with them, but also because you become the average of them. So if you have friends who are, let's call them not ambitious or a low life or whatever it is that you don't value, don't have those people. I mean, have them in your life, still be acquaintances with them, maybe check in every now and then, but those shouldn't be the people you spend your quality time with or too much time with, because that's going to affect you. It's going to rub off. And ultimately, one huge thing that I'm realizing, being home for Christmas and the holidays, is who you spend your time with. They become they can either fuel your passions or take from them. They can either like help give you energy, or they just be an energy drain. And so you want to have the right people in your circle, in your tribe, to help you, succeed, kick ass, and get after it. So very important. I'd say when doing that, just make some lists of what you're looking for. Make sure you align on specific key matters that are important to you, maybe work ethic, outlook on life, stuff like that, and then go from there.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I would add to that then is a lot of people will say that we sound heartless, and I understand that, but at the same time, you got to realize that when you do this, when you can surround yourself with better people, you're going to be happier. If you're happier, everybody else in your life is going to be happier too. You're a better person. You're going to have passion. You're going to fuel others, and it feeds off of each other. So it's definitely, it's not selfish. Maybe you can see it as selfishness at the beginning, but ultimately in the long run, it's what's going to be better for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Um,
And so no, to that point, like, they'll tell you you're selfish, you're harsh for saying some of these things. But like, listen, dude, you can get mad at me by all, well, if I don't care. Like, the thing is if you want to help, like, we might be selfish because we're looking to succeed and do better, but how can you give back more? How can you do more? Well, by the better you do, the more you can give back. And you might call me selfish, but if you're sitting on the couch broke and you claim you want to help people, how the hell are you going to help anyone from down there? You can't. You want to give people advice when your relationships are crap, you don't have an income, you can't budget, and all these things. Like, you're not doing anyone any good or favors. You have to make some sacrifices in the short term, for that long-term gain, and that's a lot of what it comes down to.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So then on to our next episode 7, we discussed yes and no. So it's a very simple episode, very simple in premise, but most people miss the idea of being clear with what you want to do. Like, if you don't want to do something, say no to it, right? Saying no to it. There's, I believe I referenced the book Essentialism by Greg McNow, and it's about cutting things out that are unnecessary, right? If you aren't truly passionate about it and you're going to be stewing on it all night, say somebody invites you to a get together or a party when you would much rather be home working on your memoir or whatever, like do what you want to do. Don't go there and be salty about it the whole time. Say no and say, you can be kind about it. You don't have to be abrupt. That's, I think, one thing we should maybe shoot another episode on is the how to win friends and influence people type of mentality. But say no to them, do it gently because you don't want to, destroy all your friendships, but say no to them. And then when you do want something, be honest again with yourself and say yes to those things, yes, those opportunities, even if on occasion saying yes might put you at risk of losing a friend here and there because you know that there's an opportunity. My uncle told me once, in regards to when I was about to move to New York, he said when opportunity knocks you have to answer because it only comes once. That was his opinion. I believe opportunity comes more and more the more times you say yes, but point is be willing to say yes to what you want and no to what you don't want. Don't be wishy-washy because you can't decide which way to go. You need to have a direction, and having a firm direction helps you to correct if you're going the wrong direction because I've decided this way. Oh, turns out I got to turn around and go this way because So that's my points on that. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, essentially what we're saying in this is commit to something. Like if someone's asking you on plans, don't give them a maybe. It's either, don't be stick to your word once you give it to. So,
Yes,
and
that's
when
important.
in saying no, one thing that's easy to do, just a simple thing that a lot of us overlook. Most times when people say, "Oh," once they cancel or they say no, they can't go to something, it's phrased as I would love to go, but I can't. One simple thing to make everyone in this equation feel better is to switch that around and say, be upfront with them about not being able to go. Be like, I can't go, but I would love to, and thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to the next one. Because just the ending notes, the ending flavor that leaves in your mouth it's a huge difference. So one simple thing when saying no to people is that. But yeah, also realize saying no to hanging out with certain friends or going out to the bars and stuff, you might lose some friends. You might lose some drinking buddies or whatever it may be. But tying this in with choose who you surround yourself with and realize that, commit to something, realize what's important to you, and then stick to those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, commitment is, I think, something our generation needs to continually work on getting better at. So that's good. Um, all right, and so for the eighth episode, we discussed creating a set of rules for your life, and obviously this is sort of a play on essentially what Jordan Peterson, his 12 rules in his new book. I don't know, is it called 12 More Rules? I can't remember the exact title of his new one.
It
Um,
is.
but I'm excited to read that for sure. Um, but I think that, this to me, a lot of people seems counterintuitive to because they want freedom. Everybody's talking about freedom and how they want to do what they're passionate about. But really, the way to be free is to free ourselves from our fallen nature. Our fallen nature is we're going to constantly do what's easiest or we'll get angry easily because it's about us, right? We play into our selfishness and we play into what's just very easy, our concupiscence. So setting these rules for your life helps you to then break out of that habit and to gain more and more and accumulate to get to a better point in your life. And it's, I would say it's probably compounding interest like nobody's ever seen when you start to do these things, right? Obviously, compounding interest in finances, but compounding interest regarding your habits. Setting those rules for your life is really going to be helpful. And it can be simple stuff like Jordan Peterson talks about, like making your bed in the morning, and very simple things to just keep reminding you that these are my guiding principles in life, and these are how I'm going to end up getting to where I want to be.
Yeah, and to taking that further, setting those rules for your life. That's just forward thinking in a lot of instances because you're thinking forward to future scenarios with some of these rules, and you're eliminating the willpower it might take in this, like to make that decision at the time. So be like, okay, I don't stay out past 2 a.m. or like I don't stay out past 1, whatever it may be. But by creating something simple rule like that for yourself, like when that scenario comes up and it's like, say you're out drinking or whatever it may be, you're just doing anything and it's really late, and that flips through your mind. You're like, oh, should I go to bed, or should I stop, call it a night, or should I keep going and hang out with my buddies or whatever some more? You've already made that decision beforehand, so there's no thinking that through. You're like, no, I'm going to go home because this is what I do, because it aligns with my other priorities. And so the rules are just another step of taking, that pick of just getting a little more granular with where you want to go and who you want to be. And it allows you to do that with a lot more ease by removing the decision and the deliberation that you will have in any time, any of the situations come up. So
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's good to cover that one. Then going into our ninth episode, we discussed accountability and routines. And I think for that one, I really enjoyed that episode for sure because of, what we're doing, obviously. So for people listening, Michael and I help each other keep accountable to our goals. And that's how we continue to try to succeed in life. So I think that in general, it's important to realize that breaking habits is very difficult. But if you've ever had a gym buddy or anything like that, you realize how much easier it is to get up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym when you know there's going to be somebody waiting there. And even though you're both doing the same thing, you're going to go there. You're going to get up and you're going to go to the gym. So having accountability is very important for trying to break habits and to create new ones, but then also creating routines, right? I've always said that when you want something, if something's important to you, you need to be part of your routine. If you can manage to have an evening routine, that's wonderful. I cannot. Never been able to do that. So all of my routines generally happen in the morning. I do certain things that are important to me on a daily basis because I want to continually, cultivate my interests in this thing or learning languages or whatever it might be. But accountability, having somebody to keep accountable to, and having and creating routines that help you achieve your long-term goals is super important. I think my last major point in that episode, if I remember correctly, was that if you're once you've done the first, parts of what we're talking about, if you set a long-term goal, you need to take what that long-term goal means to accomplish all the way down to the daily activities.
Yep. That's exactly what I was about to say and jump into, is basically setting those routines. It take those long-term goals, figure out, you'll figure out what you wanted, but you take those long-term goals, say you want to write a book in the next 2 years, and break that down to yearly, then quarterly, then daily goals, and build a routine around that. So if it's writing a book, maybe you get up and you write for half an hour first thing in the morning every single day. But you have to prioritize those things, and you have to hold yourself accountable. And if you need, and if you'd like, have others hold you accountable too. It's always nice to have someone there, like Silas mentioned, at the gym waiting for you, who's holding you accountable, where if you don't show up, they're going to chew you out. And you're going to deserve it because you let them down. But when you're holding yourself accountable, and anytime you don't show up like you said you would, or like you should, the only person you're letting down is yourself. And while a lot of us, we kind of brush that off sometimes, we shouldn't, because what we're doing every time we do that is we're degrading our self-worth and our self-value in our own eyes, which is the worst place to do it. So when you set these routines and you decide to hold yourself accountable to something, hold yourself accountable to it. You will pay. The rewards are exponential, and you'll see it so much. Like, it'll help you grow your self-worth. If you ever struggle with that, will grow your confidence, your belief in everything. Like, your whole future opens up, because the more you do, the more times you put something hard in front of yourself and you accomplish it, the more you realize just how far you can go and how much you can do. So if I were to say, like, one thing that could change your life is, picking some hard stuff to do, pick something hard to do, and just hold yourself accountable to it, do it every single day, build that routine, and your life will look different in a year. It'll look different in 6 months, 3 months.
Many times it's not even about the specific action. It's about the discipline you gain from it. If you make a deal with yourself that you have to make your bed every day, or you're going to put $5 to a charity you hate, then you're probably going to start doing it eventually, because you're going to start seeing that bill add up. So the point is that discipline is really what's going to get you further. Okay, got it. So then the 10th episode, the final episode, we discussed starting with the end in mind. Obviously, it's pretty obvious through the title of what we're talking about there. But what we did with this whole series was start with the whole intention of the podcast in mind, which was for both Michael and I and anybody else interested to use these videos and these kind of discussions as guiding factors in our future whenever we're maybe not sure about something and be like, oh, I remember that time we talked about that. What were our thoughts on that? And then we can just kind of regurgitate that. So as to for us to use for our own reference, but also for anybody else looking to figure out and to find motivation in life, which is so many of us these days, it seems, is in our 20s. It's confusing as hell. And we're trying to figure out what do we want, who do we want to be, and all those things. So that's what we did for this show. And that's how you should really live your life. It's starting with what do you want your end of your life to look like? Because if you can start setting out the future, the horizon, that's how you're going to get to where you want, right? Jack Sparrow's compass wouldn't point him in a direction if he didn't know what he wanted, right? So you can't set out on a destination on a road trip. I mean, you could, I suppose, without a destination in mind. But if you want to get to a specific place, you need to know where that place is. You need to, if you want to get the fastest way there, you need to know what the destination is. And obviously there's some trial and error in that, and we understand that. But still getting a general sense of what you want the end of your life to look like is, in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do in general.
Yeah. And I mean, so bringing it back to that college or not or no episode, one of the things I mentioned was, you have your parents, you have the world, people expecting things of you. And when you're graduating and you're kind of deciding on careers and whatnot, people ask you, like, what are you going to do? And when we meet people, they say, what do you do? They're always asking about your job and your work. But one of the most important things, and especially to live a deliberate life, is to consider not what you want to do, but who you want to be. So starting with the end in mind, like you're on your deathbed, you look around you, what do you see? What type of life did you live? What type of person were you? How did you help grow, nourish, and develop a healthy, loving family? What impact did you have on your community? And this is very broad right now. I understand. That's like a huge daunting thing to do, but that's how you get stuff done. That's how you accomplish wild and ambitious goals. Is you kind of realize you got to work backwards. You have to imagine, visualize who you want to be, what type of person does those things, and then figure out how to do that. So start with the end in mind. Like for me, there's so many things that I want to do. And so with many of these, it's like, okay, what does this person look like? How do they go about their day? What's important to them? And then just build from there, go. And always, start with the end in mind so that you can help set yourself up for success and so that you have that direction and the goal. And it helps ground you too. Because when you have that end in mind, along the way, you'll come to obstacles. You'll feel discouraged sometimes. Sometimes it sucks. It's part of life. But if you have that idea, if you have that end in mind, it helps you push through those things and helps fuel your fire some more, to put it in a very simple term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good note to end it on. One thing I do want to mention as we kind of sign off here is that we will be doing another series covering the 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules for Life. We're going to go one episode per chapter, likely, is how we're going to structure that and discuss those so you can get our thoughts on it and how it applies to you as a 20-year-old or somebody in their early 20s. And in the meantime, we're going to have a few other filler episodes like you're seeing here to kind of discuss some other topics that we wanted to. But if there's anything you'd like to hear from us in the future, maybe a specific question you'd like to get answered, feel free to shoot us an email or reach us on Twitter as well. All the links are provided in the description. So, but yeah, thanks so much for taking the time again today, Mike. And we hope everybody listening enjoyed. And we will see you next time on The Deliberate Zoomer.